for those who are interested in the real world, a look at the actual history suggests an adjustment, a modification of free market theory to what we might call really existing free market theory. That is the one that's actually applied, not talked about. And the principle of really existing free market theory is free markets are fine for you, but not for me. That's, again, near a universal. So you, whoever you may be, you have to learn responsibility and be subjected to market discipline. It's good for your character, it's tough love, and so on and so forth. But me, I need the nanny state to protect me from market discipline so that I'll be able to rant and rave about the marvels of the free market while I'm getting properly subsidized and defended by everyone else, the nanny state. And also, this has to be risk-free. So I'm perfectly willing to make profits, but I don't want to take risks. If anything goes wrong, you bail me out. Okay. So if third world debt gets out of control, you socialize it. It's not the problem of the banks that made the money. When the S&Ls collapse, same thing. Public bails them out. When American investment firms get into trouble because the Mexican bubble bursts, you bail out Goldman Sachs. And the Mexico bailout, and on and on. I mean, there's case after case of this. In fact, of the top 100 leading transnationals in the Fortune list of transnationals, there was a recent study of how they related to the states in which they're all somewhere, so they're all mostly here in some national state. It turns out that all 100 of them had benefited from industrial policies, meaning state intervention in their behalf. All 100 had benefited from the state in which they're based, and 20 of the 100 had been saved from total disaster, that is collapse, by just state bailout. When people talk about globalization of the economy, remember that the nanny state has to be very powerful in order to bail out the rich, and nothing is changing in that regard. 20 out of 100, again, were saved from collapse by this, including a number here. Another one is the leader of the conservative revolution, Newt Gingrich. Nobody's more passionate about the market than he is, particular about his own district, which he calls a Norman Rockwell world of jet planes and fiber optics, as indeed it is, except if you ask where jet planes and fiber optics came from, you discover that the public paid for them and still pays for them. And in fact, he manages to get more federal subsidies for his district than any suburban county in the country outside the federal system. So you can have conservatism flowering among the malls and so on. So one part of the system is going up, Pentagon spending. Another part's going down, social spending. And the same is true in other domains. Like, for example, legal aid for the poor is being slashed and virtually destroyed. On the other hand, the security system, the government security system, state and federal, that's going up. So prisons are going way up. The prison population, crime hasn't changed for about 20 years. And incidentally, U.S. crime rates are not off the spectrum, contrary to what a lot of people believe. Crime rates are sort of toward the high end of the industrial world, but not off the spectrum, with one exception, namely murder with guns. But that's a special feature of American society, which doesn't have to do with crime rates. Apart from that, crime rates are kind of toward the high end, not going up. The prison population tripled during the Reagan years, is going up even faster now. And I think the reason is another aspect of the third world model, namely the superfluous population. There is a big superfluous population. They don't contribute to wealth protection. Well, we're civilized folks. We're not like the people we fund in Colombia who go out and murder them, so we throw them into jail. And that's going way up even more. And there's also a kind of like a side benefit to this. The putting more and more people in jail, and in fact under harsher and harsher conditions, is a technique of social control for everybody else. I mean, if you're, someday down the road you decide to run a dictatorship, and you want to really harm people, it's kind of like Hitler tyranny or something. You know that you're going to carry out policies that are going to cause people a lot of harm. You've got to control them somehow, and there aren't many ways to do it. Everyone hits on the same ways. What you do is engender fear and hatred, and make them hate be. Then you punish those bad guys because they're really awful, and you punish them really hard and so on, and that makes people even more frightened. You can just see that happening right around you. And building up the perception of crime. Crime has what they call in literary theory a subtext. You're supposed to understand criminal has the little word black in front of it, just like welfare mother, black, rich black, welfare mother. And criminal means, that black guy is coming after you. So what you want to do is, this has the dual effect of getting rid of a superfluous population, basically unskilled workers, close race, class correlation, and also demonizing them, so everybody else is scared and frightened, and they'll be willing to accept what's happening to them too, and not look at where the source is. So that's part of it. The drug wars, basically, for this has nothing to do with drugs, but it has plenty to do with criminalizing an unwanted population and scaring everybody else. And so does the harshening of prison conditions, which is really, the United States is off the map on this one, in violation of international conventions, constantly condemned in human rights forums, and getting much worse. The reinstitution of chain gangs was, of course, bitterly condemned, but that's that bad South. Alabama, well, it's now in Illinois. The state Senate of Illinois, a week or two ago, legislated chain gangs, not for violent criminals, incidentally, for people who are found with drugs or, robbed a store or something like that. The Chicago Press pointed out that this carries this kind of reminiscent of slavery. But the legislator and the state senator who put it through said that this is just another aspect of what he called tough love. And then he explained that some people work better under humiliation. So it's really good to restore elements of slavery. And again, the subtext is everybody else gets scared. If those guys have to walk around like slaves in chains, we must be in real danger. So therefore, we'll accept what's happening to us. That's the logic. Well, that's one aspect of what's called reducing government, modifying government, to be more precise. Another aspect of it is what's called devolution. Moving governmental power from federal to the state level. And that has a kind of a rationale which you hear all over the time. A place, for example, there was an op-ed a couple of weeks ago in the New York Times by John Cogan of Hoover Institute at Stanford, who pointed out what he called a philosophical issue that divides the Democrats and the Republicans. So the philosophical issue is that the Democrats believe in big government and entitlement, and the Republicans believe in getting power down closer to the people, to the states, because they're kind of populist types. Well, it takes about maybe 3 seconds thought to realize that moving power down to the states in funding and so on is just moving it away from the people for a perfectly elementary reason. There's a hidden part of the system, of the power system, that you're not supposed to know about or think about, and that's private power. Now, it takes a big corporation like, say, General Electric or Microsoft to sort of pressure the federal government, but even middle-sized guys have no problems with state governments. They can control them quite easily. And in case anyone was too dull to figure this out by themselves, the same day as Cogan's op-ed in the New York Times, which is a typical one, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal about Massachusetts, which had a headline that read, what Fidelity investment wants, it usually gets. Okay. And then the story went on to say that Fidelity Investment, the biggest investment firm in Massachusetts, wanted even more subsidy and support from the state government that it already gets, and it was threatening if it didn't, it would move over the border to Rhode Island, where it expounds the plate. So therefore, the passionately libertarian governor quickly rearranged, tax subsidies and one thing or another, so that Fidelity got what it wanted. Well, Fidelity couldn't have done that with the federal government. Couldn't have said, you give us even more, we're going to move to Switzerland or something. Other guys can do it maybe, but not Fidelity. Raytheon, which is the biggest manufacturing producer, did the same thing. Raytheon, incidentally, Fidelity, it's not that Fidelity's poor, they just announced record profits a couple of days ago. Same with Raytheon, just announced record profits, but having big problems. So they wanted even a bigger tax subsidy and direct subsidy and tax write-offs, which just means transfer of taxes from the state of Massachusetts, and they threatened if they didn't get them, they were going to go to Tennessee. So of course they got them. The legislature passed a special law giving what they call defense industry special extra subsidies. Notice that Raytheon is publicly subsidized in the first place. That's where its money comes from. But now it has to be additionally subsidized so that its profits will be even higher than the record profits it just made. Same with Fidelity. And that's the kind of game anybody can, even way down to much smaller business